It might be you, it might be your sister, it might be your best friend, whoever it is. The tendency is that we typically always know somebody that's expecting. And Dreaming Tree has been sort of neglecting the babies in the world. Not literally, but as far as products go. But today we're going to put together a baby mobile, and hopefully you guys enjoy the process. But let's take a look at what I have here in front of me. And I did do, which I don't normally do, I did do some pre-assembly, only because the process is a little monotonous for some of the items. Actually, just, well, a few, but the most intricate one is the one that I did some pre-assembly on, meaning we're making 4 little birdies that are going to be hanging from our mobile. And I already put 3 of them together. And what we're going to do first is just kind of go through the pieces here and show you what you need. Okay, so let me show you an example of one of the little birds that I already put together. Okay, and we'll just kind of lay out the pieces. So what you're going to want to do is go through all the pieces that you have cut out and make a pile, make 4 piles for 4 birds. Okay. This piece here is this piece here. It's basically the dimensional part of our bird. And you'll know that this is for the bird because there's a little bee cut into the tab right here. Okay, so put that, find all 4 of these and put those in separate piles. Okay, next, let's look for the actual body of our bird. So you'll have 4 of these, put 1 of these in each pile. You'll also have 4 of these pieces with a little L cut into it. And the L, you'll see, is backwards, okay? It's a liner piece. So put 1 of each into each of your 4 piles. You'll have 4 of these as well. And then find 2 pieces that go opposite ways. I've got my texture side up, and this will be the front end, or both sides of the bird. So you want 1 of each for each bird, 1 for this side, 1 for this side. So you'll have a total of 2 for each bird. Okay, so you're going to have 8 of these, 2 for each bird, and put 2 of these going in opposite directions into each pile. You'll also need to find 2 of these little wing overlays. They should be going opposite directions. If you have texture on your paper here, put 2 of these going in opposite directions into each pile. You'll also have something like this. Okay, these are the overlays that go onto the actual bird. They're going to be going in opposite directions as well. You want 1 of each going in opposite direction for each bird. So there'll be a total of 8 of these, 2 for each bird. Okay, so I'm going to put 2 of these in this pile here. You're going to put 2 of those in all 4 of your piles. You're going to want to find a piece like this. This is for the tail feather. You want to put 1 of these in each of your piles. And you want to find 2 of these going in opposite directions as well. Okay, see how they're going opposite directions like that. And you're going to put a set of these into each pile. There'll be 8 total, 2 for each bird. Okay, this here is also for the tail feather. So find your piece that looks like this and put 1 into each pile. You want to find 2 flowers for each bird. So put 2 into each pile. This is the beak. Find 1, put 1 into each pile. This is the little hanger piece. You want to find 1 for each bird. Okay, and then you'll want to find 2 of these, and you'll notice that they don't overlap. The inner part, or there's a larger part and a smaller part, and they should not be facing the same way. They should be kind of mirrored. Okay, you'll need 2 of these for each bird. And finally, and I actually recut this piece because I thought I lost it, so ignore that. You'll want, these are the little accent pieces for the tail feathers. You want 1 large one and 2 small ones for each bird. Okay, so you've got 3 little pieces total for each bird. each bird is going to have this, okay, these three little pieces. So find these three and put them into a pile for each bird, okay? So those are all the necessary pieces to create one bird, and we can go ahead and get started with that. So what I did was I began constructing my body, okay? So let's get all of the body pieces out here. And we've devised a cool little method to ensure that you get a nice clean look every time. So what I did was I took this piece and I did train it just a tad, just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of a curve, just like that, okay? And then we're gonna take some glue and we're gonna glue this tab to the other side. And I should have got my glue ready because I bet you any money it's, well, look at that, it's flowing. All right, so let's get our glue onto the tab here. Okay, and I'm gonna spread that nice and thin right out to the very edge and just connect it to the other side, making sure that I get it nice and lined up. And then you can actually squeeze it flat and just kind of pinch it to speed up the setting process. Okay. There we go. So you kind of have like a little teardrop shape, okay? Now, what we want to do is find our piece that has the little backwards L cut into it, okay? So there's our L. We're gonna shove it in this way, like so. We're gonna put it in this way. So whichever way we're putting it in, with the my texture side is on this side, okay? We're gonna take the tabs that are on that side and fold them down. So let's do that. Okay, and then you can go ahead and again, texture side, my texture side is facing away from me right now. I'm just gonna slip this in here. And I kind of just left it like that. What you wanna do is just make sure that the tip of our little bird, that little point, matches up with the little corner here, okay? So just kind of adjust it ever so slightly just to make sure that that is right in there, okay? And once it's in there, what I did when I assembled my first few is I took and I glued down the second tab from the corner, okay? Just to kind of get it to anchor and sit nicely for me. And you can actually do that flat on your table. That's how I would recommend doing it. And I actually even found a nice small dowel that I used to kind of push and hold that down. So we get that first tab in place and that kind of sets the tone for everything else. Okay, now while we're here in this little corner, I'm gonna put glue on maybe just the next three little tabs here and just get those down. So I've got the glue on there. I'm just kind of pushing it down onto my table and then I'm using my dowel to push down while I kind of push up against, push in on the wall, this piece here, so that it's nice and flush against that liner piece. And I'm just running my dowel on top of that to kind of squish it down and get those tabs to sit nicely, okay? We can continue working our way around. It really doesn't matter where we go at this point. One thing that I found helpful was gluing a few of these tabs down just to kind of push it down, but we don't have to do that just yet. Let's focus more on the bottom section here. So you can do as many tabs as you feel comfortable doing. I think 5 is probably a good number. If you want to get brave and adventurous, you can do more, it's up to you. Just make sure that those tabs are under this liner piece and then continue just kind of pushing this wall in so that it sits nice and flush against this liner. And now I'm pushing down from the inside to help that glue kind of penetrate into the paper fibers. Okay, so that's what it should look like at this point. Okay, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of backtrack a little bit and I'm gonna go down to the little tail again and I'm going to take the not the first one in the corner, but the next two after that little corner piece, and I'm gonna get those glued down because that's gonna help kind of push this thing into place. So let's kind of push it in, and we've got glue on those tabs there. I'm going to flip this onto my table and push those in, and using my dowel, just kind of continue pushing in, making sure that it's nice and flush. Okay, and just hold that until it's nice and dry. I may need to go back and add a little extra glue to that. And this project is going to be a little difficult for me to do on camera because I'm trying to keep my head out of the way so that you guys can see things, but I'm going to do my best here to get it to work. Okay, this dowel definitely came in handy because my fingers are a little bit too big for that little area there. So I'm just doing the same thing. I'm just gluing those tabs down. Okay, and as I do that, I'm trying to make sure that I'm pushing the little wall in. Okay. And that's pretty good. All right, so now we can kind of continue down the row here. We've got the next 3 tabs after those last 2. I'm going to put that down on my table and just push that in while I push down from the inside. Okay, there we go. So you can see what's happening here. We're just taking the tabs and gluing them to the top of our little liner piece here. Okay, so at this point it doesn't really matter where you go next. I'm just going to work my way around. We've got 3 more here. I'm going to push them over. And you could, if you want, you could just do it like this. Okay, you could totally do it like that. You don't have to put it down on your table. I just feel like I have a better view of what's going on from the inside, but that seemed to work okay. So I'll get my glue on the next 3. And don't worry too much about, I mean, you want to get it glued accurately, but if you have a little bit of glue that spills out or whatnot, it's not the end of the world. So I'm going to tuck those under, and I'm going to go back to this little technique here where I'm just kind of pushing, I'm using my dowel to push down, and then pushing in from the outside. I just feel like that extra pressure of the dowel sort of speeds up the setting process. And that just leaves these 4 tabs, and then we're going to go back to the tail and glue that down kind of manually. Okay, so I'm going to push these over, put that back on my surface, and just push that down as I'm pushing in. And just make sure that you've got it pushed in up against that wall, this wall, as best as you can, just to make sure that we've got it nice and aligned. So that's what it should look like, okay? And now we can go back over here to these small little tabs that well, there's only 1 tab left. Just throw a little bit of glue on that guy and just push him over and hold him down manually with your finger. I don't think you need to put him down on your surface at all. Okay, all right, so 1 part is done. Okay, so our second liner there, the one that has a hole in it, is in there. Okay, and what I did was I just popped it in there, and then I flipped this thing upside down, and I kind of just smacked it against the table to force that thing up, and you see where it is now. It's like right here. Instead of it being towards the back here, it's right where my finger can grab it, and it just so happens that it's pretty much in the perfect spot. Okay, so what I did was I took these first 2 tabs here, right in the center, and I glued those down first. So just put a touch of glue on there with both of these fingers. I just pushed those tabs over, and I glued these 2 tabs onto the little liner. The rest of these are still going to get glued down, but I started with these 2. You can, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have to be these 2. It could be just something along the bottom here, okay? And then once those 2 are glued down, just started kind of going around and getting the next set glued to And I'm just doing one at a time here. And that's the beauty of this piece, is that you can get your hand in here and glue those tabs right to that little liner part. Okay, so just going around here. And as I'm holding this down, one way to know that you've got it up against this wall as nicely as possible is the tab, where it ends, should be nice and flush with the little, this little liner piece here that we're using to kind of shape this. So it should terminate right at the edge of the liner. If it's a little short, that means it's not flush. If it's a little bit long, which it shouldn't ever go past it, but if it does, well, not even sure what that would mean, because it's not really possible. But just make sure that that piece is nice and flush up against this little thin liner piece. Okay, so moving on here, I'm just going to the other side, and I'm going to do just these 3 tabs here. And just going to fold them over on top of our little liner piece, give it a good squeeze, and onto the next one, and the next one. So this just makes gluing the body on so much easier, because everything's already formed for us. Everything's nice and stiff. You don't have the walls moving in and out, and that's just going to go right on top very easily. So onto our next threesome here of tabs, just one at a time. Give it a good squeeze, and again, just make sure that you're getting it right up to the wall. Okay, and make sure that is nice and smooth in there. You should have again, like I said, the end of the tab here should be nice and flush with this little liner piece. If it's short, then you don't have it pushed in far enough, and you want to redo it. I just want to kind of illustrate what I mean by that. So when you're gluing these little tabs here, let's see, this one here, this one on my thumb, you can see if it looks like that, then you don't have this pushed in far enough. It needs to be flush. The end of that tab needs to be flush with the liner. So let me see if I can get a good shadow there. It's kind of hard to see. Maybe this one's a little better there. Yeah, that is right. That is not right. Okay, so it just needs to be nice and flush with this liner piece here. All right, so just working my way down the row here of little tabs and getting them in place. Give it a quick squeeze. Just a little bit of glue goes a long way. You don't need to overdo it on the glue. Okay, here we go. And I need to probably reapply that one. Yeah, give yourself some time for these little birds. But everything after this is pretty straightforward. We do have a little 3-dimensional moon, but you only have to do that once, so it's not too bad. All right, moving right along here to the next tabs. Again, I'm just going to do about 3 at a time. I found that to be kind of the magic number for me. It's just enough. Keep it cruising here. Okay. And then it may help with the last, or the second to last 2 tabs on each side, to have a small little dowel handy to help you get some leverage in there, because I don't think we're going to be able to get our fingers in there very well. So I used a little dowel to help me, and that seemed to work nicely. Okay, so that's looking good. I've got one more guy here. Let me grab my little dowel. So I can just pop it right under there to give me some added leverage. So I'm kind of pulling back on the dowel as I'm pushing down with my thumb, and that helps it stick nicely. And the same goes for these 2 little pieces here. Let's just do this one here. Grab our dowel, pop it in there for some leverage. Same with the other side. There we go. And these last two pieces, they should just, you should be able to glue them down without having to use the dowel. And they do overlap each other, so just throw a little bit of glue on both sides here and just close it up and just hold it for a few seconds until it fully sets. Okay, so our structure is pretty much complete here, okay? And now what we can go ahead and do is put the finishing touch on it. So this guy is going to go onto our bird like so, and then the other one is going to go on right here like this. Okay, so it doesn't matter which side you do first, but what you do want to do with this, and I didn't even bother putting glue in the center, I just focused my efforts on the perimeter, put a nice fat line of glue out there. If you have a little brush or whatever tool you use, I like using my finger, I'm just going to brush that glue right out to the very edge and make it nice and thin so it doesn't warp my paper. Okay, and once you've got that in place, I kind of just used my table and position this thing right on top, kind of using my fingers as a guide, get it nice and centered and aligned, and then just run your finger. I'm using my thumb and my pointer finger to kind of caress our bird here and get those pieces in place. Okay, so that should fit pretty much perfect onto your little bird there. And then we can flip them over and repeat the same thing. So nice, pretty thick line. I don't overdo it, but you definitely want to have enough. And then I just kind of took that and just painted it all over these little tabs here, right out to the very edge, to make sure we get a nice clean seam. Okay, here we go. Wiping my fingers under my desk. I know you guys like to yell at me for that. It's okay. One day there'll be some kind of a sculpture under there and we'll auction it off for charity. Okay, and then just pop that right on. Just making sure that, I'm looking at the tail right now, visually, making sure that that's nice and aligned, and then leave that on your table and push down while you kind of run your fingers along the edges with some pressure to help get that set nicely. Make sure your hands are clean too, especially if you're doing this with white paper. Otherwise, you're gonna make a mess. Okay, and that looks pretty good. I've got one little area here that I didn't get enough glue on, so I'm just gonna grab just a scrap piece of paper and just kind of shove it in between this piece and the base, add a little extra love there, and just hold that down until it sets. Okay, so this process here, well, the whole process actually for the bird, I don't know how you want to, or what sort of assembly line you want to create for making this guy, but if you want to just work on the structure like this, then you can rewind and watch the video again to make the second, third, and fourth bird. Okay, but that is your bird. And if for some reason you didn't align things properly, or maybe are just not happy with some of the edges, I actually took a dowel and used it to kind of smooth things out. It almost creates like a like a beveled look, kind of holding it like I'm peeling an apple or a carrot, and just kind of running it along. It almost gives it like a wooden feel. Kind of bevels it just ever so slightly and flattens things out a little bit. Okay, not necessary, but I kind of was digging the feel that it was given me. Okay, I kind of squished it there. That's okay though. It's still gonna look good. Okay. Okay, so there's our bird body. Now, what we can go ahead and do is put on our little panels. Now, in my case, well, one other thing I should mention is the way that we have our SVG files grouped, and it's up to you on how you want to do this. But we have, in this case, we have a green pattern for the body, and we're also going to do a green tail, but we're going to do blue wings. Okay, so if you want to make sure that you're following this, when you take and find the wings and create your piles, make sure that the pattern paper for the body and the tail is the same, but then use the opposite pattern for the wings. Or you could just make the bird entirely the same color. That's completely up to you. We're just letting you know how we have it situated here in this project. All right, so I've got my bird body, and I'm going to take this little panel here, this overlay, and I'm just going to get some glue on him, and I'm going to just center it nicely. Do your best to get it nice and centered, and just glue that down. Leave a little bit of a border. Try to make it nice and even if possible. Give it a good little push. Make sure that it stays nicely. And we'll flip them over and repeat. Try to get that glue out to the edge as well if you can. Okay, and then get that nice and centered. There we go. Give that a nice little push. Okay. All right, so our little birdie is getting there now. All right, so let's take a look at, it doesn't really matter what we do next. I'm going to do the wings. Okay, so let's grab our wing, and we want to kind of flare the ends of the wing out a little bit. So I'm just going to grab my dowel and just kind of plug along here. And then we're going to grab these two pieces. They're going to get glued on like this, but we also want to kind of shape these a little bit so that they stay nicely for us, and they kind of take on the form of the first part of the wing that we've already trained. So let's get our glue onto the back of the little overlay piece here. Make sure that you get that glue out to the edges here, the tips of the little overlay here. When I was working on one of them, I kind of missed doing that and had to go back and kind of clean it up. So just get that nice and centered, and then it's okay if you push it down now. Push it down flat to get that to stick. It's gonna remember its position when we first trained it. We can easily just kind of set it back to how it was. Okay, so that's what that should look like. Then we're going to repeat the same process on the other side. And we'll get our wing in place. The rest of it goes together pretty easily. So again, you're going to go through this a total of 4 times because you have 4 birds. Okay, get that nice and centered. And then you can push that down flat. Give that a second to hold. And then you can kind of pull it back how it was, just like that. Okay, and one thing you'll notice on the actual body of our bird is some score lines here that, well, they contour the shape of our wings so that we know exactly where to place it. So what I did on the previous birds that I put together was I just did little drops of glue inside of the little scored area, and just a little bit away from it so it's not right on the score mark, and then I just line it up and push down and give that a few seconds to get a nice hold. Then we can flip our little birdie over and do the same thing on the other side. Just a few little dots do. Don't need to go overboard. And I usually begin by lining that part up with the little curve there, and then up on top, and then that bottom one should just kind of fall into place. Okay, and then that way we know that we've got it nice and symmetrical, and it'll look really pretty. Okay, so there's our little wing, our little wings. Okay, let's take a look at our little tail feather here, and we're gonna do the same thing. Just take and kind of train these up, and actually, yep, so get those trained, and then find these little pieces, these elongated little teardrops. You've got one larger one, two smaller ones, okay, and those are going to get glued right onto this white piece here. And what I did was I just kind of took and just ever so slightly shaped it and trained it with my dowel just to give it a little bit of a curve, because it is going to be sitting on a curved surface. And then just place it right on there so that you have just a bit of a border around it at the top, kind of like that. Okay, and then grab your other one, the little small one here. This one might be difficult to train. You could just wrap it around your dowel just to give it a very slight curve. And then just a couple little dots of glue will do. And just get that right in place. Make sure that you get a nice little even border, and that you have it nice and aligned like that. And there we go. Okay. And we get this little piece in place. And just make sure that it's nice and centered. There we go. Okay, now what we want to do is take this piece, the patterned piece, okay, and I'm going to go ahead and train that out as well. And I'm going to flip this over. We're going to put a little bit of glue right here at the bottom of this piece, okay, just right at the very bottom, roughly like that. And we're going to line that up so that the round portions match up. Okay, so you kind of want that round part just to meet up with the round part on this white piece, and just kind of get them together like that. And then these white ones we're going to flare out a little bit more than the green part of our little tail feather. Okay, and then to get that glued on, I'm just going to throw a little bit of glue right here. Okay, and then also, just to make sure that I get this whole thing to stick, there's these little tips here. I'm going to throw a little extra glue on that, and just line that up so that it's nice and flush with the sides, and like that roughly. There we go. Okay, so there's our little tail feather. We could go ahead and put our little flower together. It's a really quick little process. Get your little flowers out, and I'm going to go ahead and shape each of these petals just to kind of give them a little bit of oomph so that they're not flat. And just kind of push those in. And then we've got these little pink polka dot pieces that are going to go behind it, and they're just going to add to the overall look of the wing. We're going to flare these out as well, just real quick. And I'm going to take this one. Well, let's just get both of these trained. You want the larger little part of this up on top. Okay, so you don't want it like this. You want it like this, so the larger one, the longer one is up at the top. Okay, so pop a little drop of glue right in the center there, and get your flower on there. Just center it as best as you can. Same with this one little drop. And get your flower on there. Just do your best to get that nice and centered on the back of the flower. Okay, and then once it's got somewhat of a hold, can kind of flare those out. We're gonna end up, and I do want you to take a look at the final photos of the project on the website, because we're gonna be throwing a little bit of bling on this. So anyway, find the flower. Well, you have a flower here with this part on it. The part on top here, you want it to be up at the top. So you don't want it on this side. You want it going back towards the wing, okay? And you want it kind of just down here in the corner so that it kind of covers up that little corner there, okay? And then we can do the same thing on the other side. Just throw a little dot of glue right on there. And again, just make sure that that big part is going up. And that's pretty good there. Oops, I didn't get enough glue on that. Let me try that one more time. There we go. And voila. Okay, so all that's left to do on our bird is to add his little beak and the little hanging mechanism, so that when we're all done with all these pieces, we can string it all together and put together our little mobile. So here's one that I did previously, and just gonna kind of put this one next to it. Okay, you can see that they're all pretty uniform. So the beak, here it is. You want to go ahead and take and fold on the score marks. Okay. Just fold everything at the score marks, and then there's 4 little tabs at the bottom. You want to fold those over as well. Okay. And then just create a little cone shape, and then there's a tab without, there's one portion of the beak without a little tab at the bottom. You can either tuck that under or over. I don't think it really matters. So I'm just going to put it on top. I'm going to throw a little bit of glue on this one section here, and then just overlap it. And just kind of hold it in my hand so it creates a little beak shape, a little square there. And we've got a little beak here. Okay, now with my practice on the first 3, I learned that it's best to go a little heavy on the glue with the beak so that we're sure that it sits nicely and stays for us. Okay, so I'm going to go a little heavy on the glue here, and then I'm going to dab this just to kind of flatten it out a little more. And as you can see on this guy here, the beak is pretty much perfectly aligned with the eye. If you have it sitting on your table, you want to pop it right about there and get it nice and centered, and just hold that in place while it sets. Okay, and add a little bit of pressure so that it adheres very evenly and nice and flush to the base of our little bird body. Okay, so be patient while that sets. Then all that's really left to do is put our little hanging mechanism on here, and then we'll take a little breather, put together some of the simpler things just to kind of change things up, and then we'll put together our moon and the actual base of the mobile. Some people say mobile, some people say mobile, some people say mobile. Whatever floats your boat. Okay, so the beak is on. Now let's take a look at this piece here. So you want to fold it at the score marks. Okay, you see that there's one section that has holes. What we're going to do is we're going to glue that section together, and then the other sections are going to flare out. Okay, so it should create like a W shape initially. And all we're going to do is on the inside, just pop a little bit of glue onto the inside of the portion that contains the holes. Okay, and then just close it up, kind of squeeze it and sandwich it like that. So we're left with this. And then what I did to make this fit on his head a little bit better is I wrapped it around my dowel to train that part of the paper to make it kind of round like that. And then it sits on his head much easier. Okay, And we're gonna glue that right about there, just between the beak and the front part of the wings. So get your glue on this little piece here and just position it nice and centered, obviously, and then try to do your best to get it in between the beak and the wings. And just hold that down for a second while it sets. And there we go. Okay, so we can put that off to the side, and you can see all 4 of my little birdies here. Really cute. Okay, you can see them from the side here. And again, we've got a green body with a green tail, blue wings, and then we have a blue body with a blue tail with green wings. So that is how we have it here, but of course you're welcome to give it any kind of look you are going after. So we'll put the birds to the side for now, and we'll take a look at a few simple things that we can kind of get prepped. I've already actually done it, but part of this mobile, we're going to have some sleepy stars and sleepy clouds. So you're going to find these 2 shapes. Okay, and we're going to just glue those on there, making sure that we keep a nice little border going all the way around. Same with the stars, so you're going to have 4 of each. So you can see I've got my 3 clouds here, I've got 3 stars, and then these 2 I left to do on camera with you guys. And just want to get your glue right on the back of this guy. And do your best to get that nice and centered, like so. Give it a nice push, and voila, you're gonna repeat that 3 more times until you have 4 clouds. These are gonna go back to back, ultimately, once we begin to string everything together. But for now, we're gonna leave it like that. And then, of course, there's our star. And you're gonna do this a total of 4 times. I'm just doing it once on camera here. And get our little star glued on. I think for me it helps to kind of hold it up since I can't get my head in there on camera. Okay, there we go. All right, so we've got 4 stars, 4 clouds. We can put those off to the side. And at this point, we should probably put our little moon together. Okay, so very similar to our birds, our moon is going to be made up of the actual wall piece. And in this case, there's 2 of them that we have to join together. We have one piece that has a little backward L on it. We have one piece that has a little backward L on it. That's our liner. And this piece, just like with our bird, is also a liner piece. Then we've got the main top and the main bottom. And we've got an overlay, another overlay, and then there's an accent piece that goes on top of that. And this is our little hanger. And actually there's 2 holes on one of them because we have a little star that's going to be hanging off the top tip of the moon. So I'll show you how that all works in just a second. But for now, what we want to do is we want to take and glue this together so that it's all one solid piece. I'm going to fold the little score mark on the large one. And of course, there is a little M, as in moon, cut into the tab here so that you know that this tab is specifically designated for the moon. Okay, and we'll just get that glued to the other M piece. And just make sure that you get it nice and lined up. There we go. Like that. Give that a second to set. It's pretty important that we keep that nice and, well, it's important that it sets correctly and properly and solidly so that it doesn't pull apart. And then we're gonna do the same thing on this side. Just fold this tab over, get a little bit of glue. Okay. And get that glued to create one solid piece. Now, what you'll notice is that, and it's actually very helpful, there's a section here that has some score marks, okay? And that is the underside of our moon's nose. Okay, so it's gonna look like this. So you can see how this is gonna look once it's all in place. Okay, so it's gonna go like that. Okay, so with that said, I'm gonna flip this over because I want my texture side out. Okay, so that means the underside of the nose is right here, and that is here on the wall. So I'm gonna take and fold the bottom tabs down so that we can get our little liner in there to help start forming our moon. Okay, so when we're getting ready to put this in here, just know that this section here is shorter than this section here. So if you look at this, you'll notice that this section is shorter, this section is a little bit longer. That's the top of the moon, this is the bottom of the moon. Okay, so let's get this guy in here. And what I'd probably advise doing is gluing the underside of the moon portion down first, because that is probably, in my eyes, a really good anchor point to kind of start this process. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way you do it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is on this little section here where there's two tabs, that little small section right there, okay, I'm gonna get my glue on these two tabs, and I'm gonna pop make sure that you have the one with the letter L on it, the backwards L, okay, and just shove that right up into the corner there, and grab that first tab from underneath, and then grab that second tab, and get that glued into place. And just hold that nice and tight until it sets. Okay, you can put that down on your table if you want to do it that way as well. And give that a second to set. Okay, so we have our first two tabs right on the underside of our little moon there. And then we can begin shaping the rest of this guy. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put glue, I'm gonna work on the longer portion of the inner part of the moon, and I'm just gonna put glue on, maybe 3 or 4 more tabs here. And just tuck those, we'll push them down, and then tuck them down and under, and I'm pushing in here. I should probably do it with my other hand. I'm using my dowel to push down, and I'm using my finger here to push this portion up against the little liner. Okay, just like we did with the bird. It's just a different shape. Okay. There we go. So we got like the next 4 tabs in place, and we're just gonna kind of keep rock and rolling here until we have all of these tabs in place and we have a nice little moon shape like that. So moving along here, I'm going to continue kind of where I left off. I'm going to pull 4 more tabs out, and I keep moving it around so that you guys can see it better on camera. So we'll put 4 more little drops on these next 4 tabs here and push them over. And then I'm going to put this down on my surface. And I'm using my dowel to push down while I use my finger here to push up against the little liner so that it's nice and snug. Okay. All right, I'm not going to worry about the little corner pieces here. I'm just going to get these final 3 little tabs here glued in place. And we can push them over. And again, using my dowel to push down. And I do have to get my head in here a little bit, I'm sorry. And I'm pushing this in, pushing that in so that it's nice and snug against the little liner piece there. There we go. Okay, so again, I'm going to skip these little corner pieces for now. I don't think we really need to worry about them until the end. It's not going anywhere. And we can start on the perimeter here. And I'm going to put glue on, I'm going to go 4 tabs this time. Just fold them over, put that down on my table, using my dowel to push down. And I make sure that these are flat. And I'm pushing in from the outside. So I'm pushing in here while I'm pushing down with my dowel. I would recommend using a dowel. It's a lot easier than if you get your finger in there in that little corner there. May end up kind of warping the paper, and we don't want to do that. All right, so those 4 went down nicely, and I'm just going to keep on cruising along here. So the next 4, just fold them over, put them down, pushing down with the dowel and pushing in with my fingers here. So again, I'm just kind of pushing that up against the liner. Ooh, this kind of feels like nails on a chalkboard right now. It's giving me the chills. I don't like it. Okay. Moving on to the next set. So this helps ensure that we get this thing assembled perfectly, and it also will help increase its longevity. All right, so again, just kind of using my table as leverage. I'm pushing down with the dowel, pushing in against this wall so that it's snug with the little liner inside. Oh God, I can't stand that. Literally, I don't know if you can see my goosebumps. Okay, that's looking good. Yeah, and that's gonna fit perfectly once we're all done, as you can see. So that's another reason why we did the liner, because then it's a lot easier to put that top piece on so the wall doesn't move around. Okay, so let's keep on cruising here. And if you're feeling gutsy, you can do more tabs to kind of speed up the process. I don't like to rush it because then I don't always get the best results. All right, so we're pushing down and we're pushing in. All right, rock and roll. All right, there we go. So actually, I did 5 tabs there, and that worked out okay. So you could probably push it a little bit and not be as conservative. Okay, so we're almost done here. I'm gonna just keep on plugging along and getting those tabs glued down, and then we can work on the other side with the thin little liner. Let me get this little chunk out of here. So the cool thing about this mobile is that just from my experience, I don't have my own kids, but you always hear about You always hear about baby stuff being donated, and then people buy new stuff, and you know they're constantly outgrowing things. I think this is one of those things where you can make it without having to spend a whole ton of money. And first off, the baby's not going to know the difference between, you know, something that you get at Target or Toys R Us, well, formerly Toys R Us. And then, you know, when you're done with it, if you want to keep it as a keepsake, you can, but you can easily recycle it, and it's not a huge deal. All right, so again, I'm just going down the row here and just gluing one little tab at a time, or actually I'm doing a few at a time here, but nevertheless, I'm just getting them in place. And then this last one here, I'm gonna leave the two corner ones alone, and I'm gonna start doing this section here. Okay, so let's start back up here and get some glue on these 3 tabs. And at this point, I can just show you from the top here. I don't think I really need to flip it over anymore. It's almost like it knows where it needs to be at this point, because everything else is pretty much in place. But do want to be patient and just hold it, make sure that those tabs get a good hold. And that just leaves 4 more tabs here, and then those little corner ones. Okay, so just a little drop of glue is all you need. I'm gonna go ahead and flip this over this time. Okay, and again, just make sure that you're kind of pushing that up against the little liner piece there, just so it's nice and snug. There we go. And then just take the last 2 little pieces here and get those glued into place, one on top of the other. And just hold that in place until it sets. And you may need to just kind of poke from the inside to get a little bit of leverage so that it grabs onto that little liner. There we go. There we go. That looks good. And then these 2 at the other tip, actually I got one of them down. I'm going to glue the other one down and just hold that in place for a second. Okay, so we've got one side pretty much assembled. So we can flip it over, and then we can take our other liner piece here and just drop it right in. It should fit nicely, which it does. And it doesn't go all the way out to the edge, and that's okay. And what we're gonna do now is flip all of these tabs in. Okay, so we'll go ahead and fold them in. And just like we did with the birds, we're gonna kind of pack this thing until that little liner comes up to the surface, and then use that to adhere these little tabs to that little liner piece. And that's going to give us a nice stable foundation to put our top and bottom on. And then the rest of this is going to go together pretty quickly. The birds and the moon are probably the most time-consuming portions of this assembly, but again, it's a really cool one-of-a-kind piece, and you can totally display this at the baby shower, and then mom can take it home, get it all set up. Okay, all right, so all the tabs are down, and now what I'm gonna do is just flip this over, just kind of do that until you can grab it and just pull it towards you. Okay. Just like that. And just like we did at the beginning, I'm gonna start by gluing the tabs on the nose down first, because I know that it's gonna be accurate that way. So you just put a drop or 2 there and then push those tabs down. go. We'll just hold that in place until it sets like that. And the rest of this should go pretty quickly for us. I'm going to scoot over to these two tabs now on the other side of the nose. And just pop that in. There we go. I should probably hold that down for just a few more seconds. So definitely be patient just to make sure those first few tabs get a hold. And there you go. So you see what we've got there. And now we can just work our way around the rest of this, and it'll be, should be pretty easy at this point. So again, just putting little dots of glue on each little tab here. I'm going to do like 4 at a time. And just press it down right onto that little liner piece. Just be patient. There we go. All right, I'm going to go on the other side here briefly. Okay. Now, if you want, you can actually use a dowel as well to help you get leverage from underneath. And that's fine too. Whatever's more comfortable for you. Whoops. Okay. So at this point, only these next 2 tabs here are going to get glued down. Obviously, there's nothing to glue after this little liner ends, and the reason for that is because it's just so thin there that it would be almost impossible to get in there. So we kind of just skip that. But get as many tabs as you can glued onto this little liner just to kind of help strengthen the structure. We'll move over to this side now and flare out these tabs. Just a little bit of glue goes a long way. I'm going to grab my dowel and stick it in there. There we go. Next one. And just make sure that you're pushing that liner up against the wall as you're pushing down to make sure that it's sitting on there nicely. And I may not have put glue on those, or enough glue. There we go. Okay, just holding that in place until it sets. Oops. Yeah, now we can really get our fingers in there and squeeze nicely. It gets really tight in those little areas near the tips of the moon, and that's totally fine. I think as long as you get a little bit in there, get those tabs down, the rest of the structure will just kind of fall into place, and towards the center, it does get a lot easier and should be able to move through it pretty quickly. There we go. So I'm squeezing the tab and the liner between my two fingers here and just, you know, giving it a few seconds to really set. And I'm also pushing the liner up against the side wall here to make sure that that's nice and aligned, because the tab again should be nice and flush with that liner. Okay, so let's flare these out. And I'm actually just putting glue on the liner this time instead of on the tab. You could do it either way, it doesn't matter, as long as the glue is in the right spot for the tab to grab a hold. So either way is fine. And you can see that this is starting to really go quickly. It's just that those little corner pieces that get a little bit more difficult. So definitely grab a little dowel to stick in there for leverage. So when I was using the dowel down here, it was basically replacing this finger from underneath so that I had some leverage from underneath. I was able to, you know, use that dowel to create a sandwich. So just kind of squeezing it between these two fingers while also pushing the liner up against the wall here as far as it can go. And that should result in a nice flush little rim here. It's going to make it a lot easier for us to put our tops and bottoms on. Okay, so that just leaves a few more tabs here. So let's get those on. And I'm starting to get a little tight here now. So I'm going to grab my dowel instead of my finger and use that for leverage. There we go. There we go. And it's working out nicely. Next one, and then we've got one more, and then we just got to wrap up this side here, and we can start putting our front and back on. Okay, so that's nice and solid, and that's what we're looking for. We're trying to just create a nice perimeter here to make it easier for us to put that other piece on. Okay, so we've got 1, 2, 3, about 4 more tabs here. And I've got a little bit of room here to get my finger in here, so I'll take advantage of that while I can. And the next one. There we go. And I'm going for the dowel. And I think that's pretty good. Okay, so I want to flatten the rest of these out. Just push them down so they're not flaring out. You want it to be pretty much level if you look at it from the side. And you can stretch the paper out a little bit if you have to. And push it down. It's just going to give us a nice solid rim. There we go. Okay, so that looks good. Now we can grab our top and bottom. So that's going to go here, like so. So that should fit on there nicely, as it does. Okay, it looks pretty darn good. So just like we did with the bird, I'm going to focus my efforts on the perimeter here and get my glue right out to the edge. I'm going to a decent line of glue on here, and then again, grab a brush or whatever it is you want to use. You can probably use a piece of paper to kind of spread that glue out right up to the edge. You can use your finger if you want. I think I've gotten so much glue on my fingers today that I'm going to opt for using this instead. But I do like the finger because I feel like I have more control that way. All right, and then you can put this down on your surface and just line that up. Make sure you got the right one. Get that nice and aligned. And then just run your finger along the edge of this to make sure that nice and aligned there. Okay, so that looks good. Now we can go ahead and flip this over. Let's get all these tabs in, and again, just get your glue onto these tabs here. And this time I'm going to use my finger. I can actually control it better. I'm getting that glue right out to the very edge and kind of spreading it thin so that it doesn't take forever for it to dry. And we'll get the other half of this on. Okay. Just get it nice and lined up. Got a little too much glue there. Okay. And just pop that right on there. And you may have to kind of nudge the walls in or out a little bit, depending on how well you did assembling the base of it. And just run your finger along the edge to make sure that you've got good contact going all the way around. Okay, so there is my final moon shape, and what we can do at this point is take our little panel, our overlay panel, and get that adhered to both sides. So one's going to go on this side. You want to make sure that you get it nice and centered. If it's like this, you can tell that there's more of a space up here, so definitely rotate it until it looks just right. Okay, so let's get our glue on the back of this, and then you're going to repeat that same process on the other side. And then we've got just two little overlays that we're going to put on top of that on both sides to finish it off. And then of course the little hanging element. So again, just make sure that you get that nice and centered and rotated correctly so that it sits nicely. There we go. And then once you have that in place, just flip it over, do the other side, and then we'll put on the next little element here to finish it off. Okay, and then we're going to take this little piece here. It's kind of like his cheeks and his mouth. He's smiling. And you'll notice that on the actual moon here, there's a little score mark that indicates where the circle goes and where the little mouth is going to begin. It kind of just fits right into it. It's almost like, I'm not even sure how to explain it. Other than if I was to draw it for you, because you probably can't really see it very well, but try to illustrate it for you. What you're looking for is a shape that's kind of like that, okay? And this piece is going to go in there. This is obviously way bigger, but the bottom of the circle is going to fit right into that. It's going to hug that little area there. You'll figure once you lay it down, you'll see what I mean. But go ahead and get that glued down, and then get the other one glued down onto the other side. And we'll be pretty close to being done with our pretty little moon here. There we go. Just like that. You can see he's got a nice, cute little smile now. You know, flip them over and do the same thing on the other side. And then we just have a little hanging element that we're going to put on our moon. And there's also going to be a little star that's going to be hanging off of our moon. So again, just find that little score area. Get that positioned right in there. And glue that down. Okay, so last but not least, we're going to take this piece here, okay, and this one here that has the two little holes on it, okay, the smaller hole is going to hang off of the tip of the moon. It's going to be like this, okay? There's going to be a little star hanging off of him. So what we want to do is with the larger hole, we want to fold that over and fold the larger hole over on the other one. And we're going to glue the two large holes together back to back, like so. So just get them back to back, make sure that they're nice and aligned. You don't want to glue anything here yet. We're just gluing the holes back to create one piece, okay? And then once we've done that, I'm going to take a dowel and just kind of shape the main portion of this so it's a little bit round, so it sits on our moon a lot easier. And then we can take our glue and put glue on the inside of this piece here, and then just glue it right to the top, just so that the little circle, the loose one by itself, is hanging off of the top tip of the moon. Okay, so make sure you push that down nicely, get it to hold. Okay. So that's roughly what that should look like with the little hole right here. And what we're going to do is we're going to take some string and glue it in the middle of the star, and that is going to just dangle off of the moon here. So we'll do that in a little bit here. We'll wait for this to really set before we move on to that. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the two stars here, and I'm going to put glue on one of them. If you want to use hot glue, you can. Make sure that you get good coverage on this, because we're going to sandwich these two pieces together with a bit of string going through the center of it. Okay, and I'm going to do it like that. And grab your other star and just get it right there. Okay. So just sandwich that in there and hold it for just a few seconds. Make sure that it sets nicely. Okay. There we go. And then I, of course, left extra string because I didn't want to come up short. And then just kind of decide how much or how low you want it to hang, and just tie it into a knot. I probably would double knot it. I probably want a little bit more than that, right on the bottom there. Okay, with this type of string that I'm using, I am going to have to double knot it because it really wants to just do its own thing. So I'm going to do that, give that a snip. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is begin putting the actual mobile together, and I'm going to begin by simply folding everything at the score marks here. Okay, and we're going to pop some panels on this while this thing is still flat, just to make life easier, and then we can put it together. So very simple assembly. Now, one thing you want to keep in mind is there's a letter T cut into this little tab here. This is the top. Okay, that's the top, that's the bottom. Just make sure that you kind of keep it that way. And we're going to grab these little overlays here and just get them lined up. You'll notice that two of them have the little squares at the top, two of them have the little squares at the bottom. Let's just put them down just to make sure that everything lines up nicely both ways. These are all identical, so it really shouldn't matter, but just to be safe, we should probably do that. And also, it may help, for the sake of alignment, to put push these little squares out so that we can actually see the hole as we're gluing this down. So let's grab our glue and let's get this glued into place. Okay. And just follow the little cutout there. Just make sure that you get it right over that and do your best to make sure that it's nice and even vertically and horizontally. And just move on down to the next one. Okay. Yeah, my door kind of closed on me, but that's okay. Still got it pretty much dead on. All right, moving on to the next one here. Oops. Okay, again, just make sure that you're kind of following that little cutout there where the little poles, paper poles are going to go in to support our little birds in the moon. Actually, the moon's going to hang off of the bottom part, so forget I said that, but little poles are going to go in here to help our little birdies fly. Okay. Okay, so now that we have those in place, let's get our little letters on here. So obviously we're spelling baby, so we're going to get these glued down like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that before we insert our little poles, our little support poles. Okay, and again, just make sure that you are not obstructing that little square cutout for the poles. The pole, once we pop it in there, is going to be nice and snug. There's going to be a little bit of resistance just to make sure that it doesn't wobble around. It's going to be a nice tight fit. And we're kind of getting near the home stretch here. The last step is going to be just stringing everything on to our string and then hanging it from our little support pieces. Oh, I also, I'm putting little styrofoam balls at the end of the little poles and painted them with a white glitter paint just to kind of make them sparkle a little bit. And onto my letter B here. Okay. There we go. All right. And last but not least, there we go. That's very cute. Okay, so while we have this flat still, we can put this little panel right on here. And let's get that nice and centered. Just do your best to get that as centered as possible. I would probably line it up with that B there. Okay, there we go. All right, so what we're going to do next is we're going to half construct this box, and we're going to just glue the bottom in place. And then that way, these little guys here, we can have access to them because we're going to take this little tab and glue it to the little support posts so that they don't move back and forth. It's going to kind of keep them in place. So we can actually kind of work with this flat and get this tab glued to this side here. Okay, so let's do that. And get that glue out to the edge as nicely as you can. And go ahead and close this up. And just get it nice and lined up there, making sure that the score lines are matched up. Okay, and then you can kind of fold it onto itself to help with the gluing. I kind of like working with things when they're flat. It just makes life so much easier. Okay, so there is our box. And as I mentioned, we're going to close the bottom up first and leave the top open until we get our little support sticks in there. So let's get some glue on these tabs here. Let's work a little bit out to the edge as well. Okay. And then I'm going to take that and spread that right out to the edge. There we go. And you can flare these up a little bit so that as you're pushing down, it grabs more of that paper surface. And just give it a close. Run your fingers along the edges there while pushing down. And then you can put this on your table and pop a little dowel in there, add some extra pressure. There we go. Okay, so there is the beginning of that. And I'm gonna let that set for a second while we put these together here. Okay, and now you'll notice that on this piece here, there are 4 sections that have score marks, and then 1 section that doesn't have a score mark. That section is your little tab. That is what we're going to use to glue and keep this thing together as a nice well, stick or pole or support beam, whatever you want to call it. So get that folded. Okay, and turn it into this shape here, obviously. And we're just going to take that and glue it. And we can actually do this flat. We can glue it like that, and then we can shape it once it's all nice and glued for us. It'll just make this process easier. So let's get our glue onto this thing here, and then I'm going to give it one little fine line along the edge and just bring that right out to the very edge there. And then just just push it down. You could totally do this flat, and we'll pop it back into shape here in a second. This way it's just way easier to glue, and it'll be way more accurate too. Okay. All right, so now that it's glued, bam, turn it back into a dimensional, it's like a boxy straw, I guess you can call it. Okay, so you know what, let's construct the other one while this one sets so that we don't inadvertently mess it up. Okay, so just fold everything at the score marks here. And again, look for the piece that doesn't have the score mark. That is going to be your tab. That's this piece here. Okay, so let's just fold it over in half. So our tab is here now. And just get your glue right on there. And I'm basically doing 2 lines here, one sort of in the middle and one right up to the edge. And that one's not very close to the edge, but I think I got enough glue on there to where it'll work just fine. So, and then we just pop this right on and just smooth it out. There we go. Beautiful. And then just pop it down. And there's our other one. Okay, so let's take our box. These are both the same, so it doesn't matter which one you use first. Let's get that little little square out of the way. And take this thing and just thread it through. Again, there's going to be a little bit of resistance there, and that's what we want. Kind of helps to actually look at it this way, so that you're staring right into it. It makes it easier to kind of feed it through. And then as you're pushing it through, you'll see the little score marks on this piece. So what you want to do is just make sure that those score marks are right in line with the sides of the box. Okay, and that will make sure that you have it placed correctly, and I do. And then what we're going to do, again, to keep it from moving, is we're going to take and put a little bit of glue on those little tabs in there, and just push that right up against the little bar and let that set. And that's going to prevent it from moving back and forth. Okay, so again, just putting a little dash of glue here right on that little tab, and then pushing it down onto the little bar to keep it from moving around. Okay, and then once we get that done, we can go ahead and close this box up. So let's grab the other one, and it may have been a good idea to work on the bottom one first, but I don't think it really makes a difference, honestly. So again, just do your best to feed that through. That one went in a little bit easier. I think I may have had the panel misaligned. And then look at it this way so that you are sure that you have it matched up and lined up properly. And then just give it a good little poke, and it should pop right through for you. Feed it all the way through until it's nice and aligned with the little score marks on there. And mine needs to go this way a bit. And there we go. Perfect. Okay. And then again, just put a little bit of glue on those little tabs that we had. They were kind of like creating almost like a little window in the letters. Come on, glue. There we go. And just push it over onto the little bar. I had some extra glue on there. That's okay though. There we go. Okay, so our bars are in place. And next thing we want to do is just close the top of our box up. So let's get our glue onto the little tabs here, like so. And as always, I'm going to throw a little line right across the very bottom. Okay, and spread that thin right out to the edge. There we go. And then flare them out just a tad, push it down, let it grab those tabs, and close. Just kind of pushing down and running my fingers across the edge to close this up. Don't do too much pressure, because you could inadvertently kind of warp the paper, but that looks great. Okay, very cute and surprisingly sturdy. It's only holding up paper, so I think it'll be more than enough. And the next thing we're going to do is work on the top of this thing. We've got a cute little flower that we're going to put on top. So that is our first little piece. But before we do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to train this down so that it kind of hangs over. Okay. And then I'm going to take the tips and just pop them up so that they're not completely droopy. And this is a 3/8 inch dowel. If you want to get even more of a droop, use a thinner dowel. And I think it'd be kind of cool to like maybe vary it a little bit so it's not all the same, and maybe kind of curl that up a little bit. This is taking us back to doing flowers, which is fun. We'll have more of that stuff coming too here in the future. All right, then let's just make sure that we're not missing anything here. No, we're good. We'll put some glue here on top of our box. And of course you can see that this is square shaped on most of it. So just match up the square portion of this and just glue that down. And just be patient and hold it down while it dries. There we go. And I've got a pretty little flower that we're going to put on top here. Okay. Now the largest set of petals here, we're going to train these down. So I'm going to get my 1/4-inch dowel and just kind of train these petals down. And they're gonna pop back up a little bit because they're going to be sitting on a flat surface. But I just want to show you what that's going to look like, kind of like that. Try to make sure that you get it nice and centered. And I'm probably going to offset it a little bit so that the petal, there's one petal that wants to kind of go down more. And maybe offset it a little bit so that the petals are being kind of held up by the leaves. So you don't have one random drooping petal. And I'll get that glued down. And just get that right in the center as best as you can. I'm going to kind of angle it like this so I can get a bird's eye view of what I'm doing here. And I think that looks good. That looks pretty centered to me. Good. Okay. Oops. Accidentally moved it. There we go. All right. And our next petal here, this one, we're going to actually curl up. There we go. Get that glued into place. And we'll have one more after that. And then finally, we've got the little hanging mechanism that's going to keep this whole thing afloat. There we go. That looks good. That looks pretty centered. And one more here. I'm going to grab my small dowel here and really make these curls more pronounced. There we go. Okay, just a little dot of glue. A little goes a long way here. And again, just offset that one so it's not right on top of the other petals. That looks good. Right about there. Okay, so we got a pretty little flower there. And then we're gonna take this little piece here, and this is gonna be our main little hanging mechanism. And what we wanna do is we wanna put glue on the inside of just the circular part where the hole is. You don't want to glue these little pieces here at the bottom because that's going to get glued here. So throw some glue onto the little pieces there. We're just kind of sandwiching them together. Okay, and there we go. And then finally, we can take and put some glue on this piece here and get that nice and centered right in the middle of our flower. And just push and hold that down for a few seconds while it sets. There we go. So technically, you could make this piece and hang whatever you want from it. It's a pretty snazzy little contraption, and if you wanted to make your own mobile, you totally could. So there's a little option for you. Now, only thing that's left to do with this thing before we start hanging everything on it is putting this little piece on here. Okay, so what we're going to do is just like we did here, we're going to put glue on the section that contains the little holes. Okay, that's where our string's gonna go. Actually, the moon is gonna be hanging off of this one. Okay, so get your glue in there and then just close it up. Okay, but don't glue the leaves together. We want the leaves to, you want it to look like this when you're done. I'm having a glue explosion here. Okay, so it should look like this. Almost looks like a little butterfly or something. Okay, and I don't really think that the orientation of this piece really matters. I don't think it matters which way you glue it, but for the sake of consistency, I'm gonna glue it so that this little hanger piece is going in the same direction as the one on top. Okay, so I think it's light enough to where I don't need to worry about it crushing my flower, so that's always nice. And I guess that's an accidental security feature that we've incorporated into this project, is that if it happens to fall on the baby, it's just paper. So I think it's safe to say that this is the safest baby mobile ever invented. Okay, so there it is. All right, now at this point, I'm not gonna do this on camera, but I've got these styrofoam balls, and as you can see, the ends of these are kind of rounded, so that when you glue the styrofoam balls onto this, it kind of sits a little bit more snug. Okay, so do that. That's really not vital to the assembly right now, but you are gonna wanna do that. And then at this point, we're pretty much ready to start kind of stringing everything together and getting this thing finalized. It's gonna be really cute. Okay, so we are at the tail end here, and we're just gonna wrap this up. I'm gonna show you some of the things that I did here off camera. Added some liquid pearls to the stars. We added a little bit of bling to our clouds. I popped a couple of rhinestones onto where the eyeball is and the center of the flower. I didn't want to show this on camera because it's pretty self-explanatory. We've got these little styrofoam balls. We will mention and include the diameter of the balls, but those are just hot glued onto the ends of the little support beams there, and added a little bit of liquid pearl around the little panels here. I still got one more side to do. And kind of blinged out the moon as well. Added a little rhinestone onto the star. Oh, by the way, I'm not sure if I showed this yet, but took a little bit of string. In this case, we have a silver metallic string. On mine, it was about an inch and a half. I'm pretty sure that we already showed you that, and tied it onto there. And I have two of the birds already complete here. Okay, so you see we've got the string tied to the bird here, and then the little cloud is sandwiched in between the string. And I cut about 14 inches of string for each one. Ultimately, we want each bird to be about 7 inches from the support beam, but I gave myself a little extra slack just in case. So I'm going to show you how I did this here in a second, but the distance that I have here from the top of the little hanger to the bottom of the cloud is about 2 inches. Okay, so that's going to leave about 2 inches here, and then I'll have that hang in maybe, probably 3 inches here, and then just tie that off. It'll leave a little bit of slack. And what I did was, when I tied these, I just kind of put them on my little grid here and put the birds side by side, so that when I sandwiched the star, I made sure that I had 2 inches there as well. Okay, so I'll show you how I did that. Let's grab one of the birds here. And as I mentioned, I've got about 14 inches of silver string. This is kind of like a metallic string, and sometimes it's a little tough to tie. If you're using baker's twine, you're probably going to have a much easier time working with that compared to this this metallic like string that I have here. but it still works. It's a little finicky sometimes, and it tends to fray very easily. But it's shiny, and that is going to keep baby's attention much more if it's reflecting and refracting light. So I'm just going to snip that off. Okay, and again, I'm going to lay him down, and using my little grid here, just kind of measure out 2 inches. And I'm going to take my stars here and put one upside down. And actually, what I'll do is get my glue on my star here and probably add a little extra down the center where the string is going to be so that it kind of stays in place for me. Just pop that down. Make sure that you have the orientation correct. And just about at about 2 inches, just pop that right in the center of our star. That glue should somewhat keep it in place while we grab the other star and sandwich it. And then once we have it sandwiched, I'm just almost like I'm making raviolis or pierogies, just going around the edge, or like a pie, and just pushing down to make sure that it has a nice hold all the way around the perimeter. Okay. So that's pretty much all that entails. It's pretty straightforward, but just make sure that you got a good hold all the way around. And same thing goes for our cloud, which we'll do next here. Now I still have to glue these back to back. Let me get my last bird here. And again, I've got 14 inches. And I'm going to tie that down first. All right. I'm going to snip that off. And again, from the top to the next little piece there. I'm going to get that in place here in a second. Okay, and let me just throw a nice little line of glue down the center to kind of hold the string in place while we get the cloud sandwiched. And if it's off by just a little bit, it's not the end of the world. But use the little dimples to help you with the centering of the string. Little scallops or dimples, whatever you want to call them. And make sure that string is nice and centered. And then again, just kind of go around the perimeter to make sure that that gets nice and sandwiched. Here we go. Okay. Perfect. All right, so our birds are ready to go. And of course, we have the little moon that's going to hang from the center. So if our birds are hanging at about 7 inches, I think the moon would probably be good at about 3.5 or so. So I'm going to give myself about 5 inches of string here, and we'll just cut it just a little bit long. Okay, and I mean, you guessed it, or pretty much all we're doing now is just getting everything together. And that's pretty much it. There's not much else to say, aside from if you've made this project, I would love to see your version, because this is definitely one of those, well, with all the little details, it's going to be one of the longer projects that you've probably done from our site. But as I mentioned before, it's a very unique gift Very practical, and definitely a one-of-a-kind sort of a thing that an expecting mother will definitely appreciate. So I'm just flipping this upside down so I can work I'll just pop this right here so it's a little easier to manage and handle. There we go. I'm just going to double knot that. And if all goes well, it'll be at roughly 3.5 inches or so. There we go. Just tie that off, give it a snip. Oops. All right, so we've got that, as you can see, dangling there. And let me see if I can count that. Yeah, that's about 3.5 inches, exactly. So that worked out nicely. And then, again, what we're gonna do is get this at about 7 inches. And let's see here, we've got, as far as the string, so let's look at the string. Yeah, that's about right. So I'm just gonna tie it off right about here so that we've got a good distance here, almost like an equal distance between the cloud and the bird and the cloud and the little stick here. So let me move that out of the way. And I'm just gonna tie that off. Just tie it around, do a nice little double knot. And just kind of nudge it out to the edge, all the way up to the edge of the ball, basically. So we're just gonna repeat this process, and we wanna alternate clouds and stars. So for this next side here, just make sure that you pull one of the star pieces. And again, just tie that onto your little support piece here, and just continue all the way around until you have them all tied on. So we've got everything tied onto the support structures, and you can see here that I've done a little bit of embellishing with some rhinestones on our bird, one on the eye, one on the little flower here. We get some little rhinestones for some cheeks and the nose on the clouds. And I took a pencil and drew in some eyelashes. Now, when you hang this up, try to get it so that the moon is kind of up in the sky among the clouds and the stars, and that the birds are just slightly below that. But that's roughly what it should look like. And this one is definitely a fun project. There's a lot of love put into it, so whoever gets it, I'm sure will love and appreciate it. And hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, take a moment and visit our YouTube page and hit that subscribe button. And I'd love to see your version of this, and I'd love to see what types of colors and patterns, and just am very interested to see how other people's turn out. So if you do make this project, visit us on Facebook, do a search for Dreaming Tree Group, and post your picture. We'd love to see it. And as always, I look forward to crafting with you again. Stay on top of all things Dreaming Tree and engage with us today. Get the latest news and enter in our giveaways on Facebook. Get inspired by following us on Pinterest. Be the first to see our new product launches on Instagram. Do you prefer Twitter? Yep, we're there too. Watch our beautiful product trailers and assembly tutorials on YouTube. For more information, visit www.3dsvg.com. Live, craft, love, and dream.